September 30th of 1956, so it's been a while ago, Coretta Scott King, who was Martin Luther King's wife, put the baby to bed in the bed, and the baby was sleeping, and she went in the kitchen to sit down. Her husband, Reverend Martin Luther King, was at the church where he worked. He was a pastor. Many people kind of ignore the fact that he was a Baptist preacher, a pastor. He was at that church, and a bomb went off and tore off the whole front of their house. And Martin Luther King rushed home when he heard about this. His wife and his baby were okay, but he had a moment of crisis then. He was beginning to think, should I arm myself in order to protect my family? Didn't he have the right to protect himself? It was as close as he had ever come to taking up arms against those who meant to harm him, who meant to kill him and his family. But the Lord God comforted him, calmed him down, and let him know that those who live by the sword die by the sword. In the Bible, in Matthew 26, 51 through 53, we can read, excuse me, and suddenly one of those who were with Jesus stretched out his hand and drew his sword and struck the servant of the high priest and cut off his ear. And Jesus said to him, "Put your sword in its place, for all who take the sword will perish by the sword. Or do you not think that I cannot now pray to my Father, and he will provide me with more than 12 legions of angels?" So Jesus is saying, why do we need a sword to take care of us when we can call upon the heavenly host, God's help in all situations? So as a young new pastor, Martin Luther King, a black man, took a church in Montgomery, Alabama. And Montgomery, as in many places in the South, black people could only ride at the back of the city bus. When white people came in, they got the front seats, and the black people had to move to the back of the bus, all right? A lady named Rosa Parks, after a hard day of work, she was a seamstress, she sewed clothes, refused to give up her seat at the front of the bus, and she was arrested. Seeing the injustice of this, Reverend King led the black people of Montgomery, Alabama in a boycott of the buses. They simply refused to ride the buses. And that cost the bus system a lot of money. You know, a lot of people rode those buses. They chose to either walk or carpool. And sometimes people had to walk a long way to get to work. One lady, when they were talking to her, she said, "My feet is tired, but my soul is rested." She knew she was doing something that was right, that was good. But after a full year, the laws were finally changed, and black people were allowed to ride the buses just like anybody else. How many of you, this is a loaded question, how many of you hate someone because of the color of their skin, because they're black? How many believe that black people should use a different bathroom from white people, or a different drinking fountain? They should drink from a different fountain. Back in those days, there were fountains for white people and fountains for colored people. They call them colored people. Of course, you don't think that, you know, but things were different in America back then. The black people had been brought to America as slaves, and they were seen as inferior. So the way they were treated as if they were inferior, almost as if they were non-people, that they were just someone that you owned. And even after the Civil War, when they gained their freedom, they were still treated very poorly. Who knows what a game changer is? Anybody, like in football or soccer, anything like that? Yeah, Austin?
I would say, I don't remember what the literal definition is, but kind of when something switches, a circumstance that
Right.
changes everything.
Right, yeah, so a person with a really talented, right arm for the football, right, or soccer, that knows better than anybody else, is really talented, could be considered to be a game changer. So if they came in the game, you might see the game shift, and suddenly you'd be winning because you had this person, or even several people maybe, that would change the game. Well, Martin Luther King, because of his great faith in God, was a world changer. What he saw as injustice before, he set out to change, and he did change it, along with all the people that were with him and followed him. And that's what I would like to see happen here in this youth group. We're going to have our fun, believe me, but when we come through this, we are going to be world changers. We're going to know how to affect the outcome in the things that we do, so that the world is a better place when we get out into it, all right, as adults, or even before that. Now, a few weeks ago, I said that leadership is the ability to influence the outcome. There is a power in the good news of Jesus Christ that we are able to receive pain and anger in ourselves rather than retaliating and inflicting pain on others. And what I mean is, that's what violence is all about, isn't it? It's inflicting pain on someone until they finally give up, right? They finally say, "Oh, uncle, I give up. It's too much pain." But when Jesus went to the cross for us, he didn't inflict the pain on us, did he? We deserved the pain because we sinned, and he took the sin upon himself when he went to the cross. He took that pain in his own body and showed us the way out of the endless cycle of hatred and violence and madness that people have been bringing into the world since the beginning of time. We can choose a different way, a way of grace and forgiveness, a way of love. Now, it's agape love we're talking about here, and Martin Luther King talked a lot about agape love. We have eros, which is the love of another because they are lovable. Oh, that person is so lovable, right? that's eros. Phileo, the love of another because they love you. This is brotherly love. Philadelphia, Phileo, is the city of brotherly love. That's what it's called. But agape love is a love for another because God created them just like he created you. And he loves them just like he loves you. And this kind of love is not a feeling, "Oh, she's so beautiful, I feel like I'm falling in love with her." Or, "He's just such a hunk, I think. I might just pass out when he passes by. I love him so much." That's love as a feeling, right? I mean, that's what we see in the movies, right? Like, "Oh my goodness, so beautiful, so perfect in every way." That's a different kind of love. Agape love is a love that never fails. We read in 1 Corinthians 13:8, love never fails. Think about it. Love always accomplishes what it sets out to do. It's always influencing the outcome. It just always works that way. Violence in all its forms is both immoral and impractical. Jesus said that even anger is a sin equal to murder. It is immoral because it thrives on hatred rather than love. It means to humiliate the opponent rather than to win him to Christ. It means to hurt him rather than to reconcile with him. But more than that, violence is impractical. It doesn't work. It doesn't achieve what it sets out to achieve. I've already used the illustration of escalation. Remember, well, you've got a fist, he's got a knife, I've got a gun, he's got a rocket launcher, I've got a tank. I bring in the nuclear weapons, he brings in the nuclear weapons. Pretty soon everything's dust, right? And we've solved the problem, right? No more problem. We're all dust. Yeah, what? Crazy, right? And so destruction by its very nature can never be constructive, right? You're never going to build anything with a destructive force. It just doesn't work. So in that way, it's impractical. We must attack evil itself. just as we see with Martin Luther King, he could have attacked white people, right? He could have said, well, white people are my enemy because they're treating me badly, so I'm going to attack white people. And what would have happened? Fist, knife, gun, rocket launcher, tank, nukes. Pretty soon, problem solved, right? Emily, you're getting a kick out of that. I like that. But in fact, if we add violence to violence, we only end up with more violence, right? I mean, that's the equation, right? It's like, okay, violence plus more violence doesn't equal peace, doesn't equal less violence, equals more violence, 2 times much violence, right? Jesus gives us a way out by unraveling this violence that we all get caught up in it. You know, we see it in the movies, we hear it, you know, from our friends, like, whoa, you know, she treated you like that, you need to treat her like this, you know, get up, get one up on her, you know, retaliate, take action. You know, we're going to talk more about this next week, the Christian nonviolence. Nancy and I have been living this way for a long time, and I'll get more into that next week. But we literally, it's probably been 25 years ago that we took a vow of nonviolence, and I'll get more into it next week. But we realized that violence is not going to do anything in this world but cause more destruction, more problems. It's just going to continue to escalate one on top of the other. And so next week we'll talk more about that. But I wanted to share with you the way of Martin Luther King Jr. is called 6 Principles of Nonviolence. So we're going to start with this, and you're going to hear a lot more about this because, like I said, Nancy and I have really committed our lives to living Christian nonviolence in our lives. Not that we're perfectly nonviolent by any means. You know, we both get angry. We still have, you know, delusions like, oh, we'll get my nukes, you know, we'll take care of this problem. You know? We're having a family dispute. Okay, time to nukes. Anyway, principles of nonviolence. Nonviolence is a way of life for courageous people. I think we get the idea that somehow it's cowardly to back down from a fight or not to engage in, you know, the fist, the knife, the gun. That somehow if we unravel a problem other than violently, we're cowardly, right? That's kind of the perception the world has of us. Active nonviolence resists evil. A lot of people say, you know, you turn the other cheek, you don't really do anything. But we're going to talk about next week how that truly is accomplishing something through love. But in active nonviolence, we are always resisting evil. People sometimes use the verse in Matthew, I think it's Matthew 5, resist not evil. And everything Jesus did was to resist evil. So to take that out of context, you know, we can say, well, we're not supposed to do anything, they're evil, but we don't do anything. That's not what that means. And again, next week we'll talk about what it talks about in Romans, the book of Romans, that you don't repay evil for evil. That's a different kind of take on that, right? Do not repay evil for evil. Nonviolence seeks to win friendship and understanding. I always say that with nonviolence, you can show up early and leave late. With violence, you only have a certain little opportunity, right? You either you know, fight and win, or you fight and lose, and it's a short period of time. With nonviolence, you can be winning somebody's friendship long before you ever get into an argument or into a conflict situation, right? You can be sure that you're winning that person over. And the same thing after a conflict, it's still not over. Even if the other person has been violent, you're still working with that person, trying to win them through the way of love to Jesus Christ. Nonviolence seeks to defeat injustice, not people. So as I was saying, you know, Martin Luther King would have been perfectly justified to say, well, white people are my enemy, and I will, I will fight them violently. But on the other hand, he chose to look at the injustice and to say, what white people are doing is wrong, but we're going to try to win them over to a place where they will do it right from now on. Nonviolence holds that suffering can educate and transform. That's my suffering. if someone inflicts suffering upon me and I show them nothing but the love of Jesus Christ, it can transform their life. If I enter into it just like they did, then that's just what the world expects, right? No, gun, rocket launcher, tank, that's what we get. Nonviolence chooses to love instead of to hate. It's a choice that we make, agape love. We recognize that God made them, He made us, and He expects us to love one another, as hard as that may be. And finally, nonviolence believes that the universe is on the side of justice, that God stands with the truth. Martin Luther King said, the arc of the universe is long, but it tends towards justice. And if we just live with that promise that God is with those who are loving and just, living in the truth, then we have a great deal of power. Next week I will share some of the first-hand experiences that Nancy and I have had standing up to violent situations, including knives and guns, that came out differently as a result of our choosing the way of Christian nonviolence. All right, so thank you.